All right, we are now on to the disease tracker. You've already kind of had a little introduction from the teacher, myself, going over what we're doing today. But remember, we're working with dynamic lists. So we've done static, and now we're doing dynamic lists to give you some information on how to use these different things. So we probably already talked about, let's go to our app that we've downloaded, some different components you probably haven't seen before. For example, we have the spinner, where you can select different months. That's one of the big things that we haven't used before. And obviously, that's one way to organize your information and really have different variables. So we have our month spinner. And as you can see here in the elements, all you do is you put a word with a comma and you just keep going. So that's how you can have separate. Some of you may want to see how this works so that you can use it when you get into making your own app later. So we have the month spinner, and we also have some other things that you'll see. But we're going to work through dynamic lists, which you learned about in the quick little video you've looked at, and kind of talked a little bit about our event handler. But let's just kind of get into it as this app just kind of builds as we go. And we'll split this into two different parts, two different videos to try to not make it so overwhelming the first time. So let's talk about the lists. The focus of our programming for this activity is to learn how to use a dynamic list to collect and store data that we're going to get from the user. Now, because the app needs to store the month selected as well as the amounts entered, we're going to need two lists. One list for the set of data, and these lists will represent the model layer for our app, since they're going to maintain data that the app uses. So what we're going to need to do is from the variables drawer, we're going to drag the initialize global. So I'm going to go to the blocks. We're going to drag an initialize global out in here, and we'll put it with the other ones. And let's rename this entry, E-N-T-R-Y, months. Remember, months should be capitalized. So from the list drawer now, we're going to want to create, and we've done lists before. This time we're going to create an empty list. And the reason why it's empty is because there's nothing there right now. We're going to build on this, and we're going to put more information into it. So what do you think the purpose of entry months is going to be, and how is that different from the months spinner? That's a good question, and that's one thing I want us to think about here. The big difference you're going to notice between them excuse me, is that the entry month list is used for storing the months that the user selects for the data, and the list is a dynamic one. It's set for us. It's kind of put into that spinner. The month spinner represents the 12 months. Okay, so they just kind of pick from their entry. So that's kind of how the difference is between the two. So let's get into creating that list. Done. Now let's create another initial globalization. And this time we're going to create an initial globalization for the entry amounts. So we have the entry month, so when it was entered for the month. So as you choose them, now we're going to have the entry amounts. Entry amounts. Okay. And again, we're going to create an empty list from this. So I'm going to copy and paste this since it's the same piece that we're looking for. So for now, we've created two empty lists in this device's memory, and they're accessible by their variable. So the names would be entry months and entry lists. Right now, there's 0 indexes and 0 information within those. So that's basically the length of it right now. So every time a user is going to select something, we're going to be working with this add button. Okay. So the add button's already been created. It's down here. So let's go ahead and set this up. Oops, looks like we're going to have to reset in a little bit. Let's go ahead and set up our add button for both the month selected and the number of mounts. So let's go ahead and get ready to put this together. Go ahead and click add button. Click. And we'll put that down here. Under the clear data button, which is nice to know that our clear data button was already started for us. So let's go ahead and work with the add button now. We're going to want to add items to the list. So we're going to go into lists here, and we're going to add items to the list. And what we want to do is we're going to want to get information from that entry months. So we'll change this to entry months. And where are we going to get that information from? We're going to get that from the months spinner. So we're going to go to the month spinner, and we're going to want to grab its selection. So basically, whatever month is chosen, that's what's going to go into that item. Now, I'm going to copy and paste this because we're also going to want to do the same thing for entry amounts. Now, the amount text, oh, that's not going to let us change that, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. The other one we're going to want is to take it from the amount text box. So whatever someone types in that text box, that's what we're going to store. So let's go to that amount text box, and let's go ahead and grab the text. That's the box that we want. So where is it? There it is. And we're going to put that in there. So far the add button is going to add these two lists and start building it. Now, in the amount text box, we're also going to want to grab the amount.text that we can actually add something to. For now, we want to make sure that the text is blank, since there's nothing in there right now. That's going to be our amount text box. And then one of the things we didn't talk about yet is this non-visible component called the notifier. The notifier is going to be giving us some information as well. We're going to want to have that as an alert. So basically a notifier is something that pops up and gives an alert to someone. So let's put the information from the notifier in there. So what we're going to want to have is we're going to want to show an alert. That's how we're going to use it today. And the alert that we're going to show is going to be within a text. And the text that we're going to want to put in there is data successfully added. So when data is successfully added, it's going to say data successfully added. And we'll put an exclamation point. It makes people feel good and knows that we're probably yelling it. Okay. Now, before we do anything, we're going to want to make sure that our app works. So I'm going to have to reset the page and reset my app. And we're going to test the add button here with our tablet. And connect it. So that we can make sure that the text box actually clears and an alert message appears when we select and add a button. If they do not, we're going to have to check and fix our code and then test again. So right now there's no code that actually indicates that the month and the number of patients have been added together correctly. We're just going to add this code as we go through. So let's say I put in January. We add it. Oops, I forgot to show you. I have it all set up here. Let's say we picked March, month I was born in. And I'm going to put down the date of my birthday as well. And I'm going to click add, and we do get the notifier that says data successfully added. So that means that what we created so far is working. But again, there's no code that indicates that the month and number of patients have been added, so you don't see anything showing up down here. We're going to get to that next. So the next thing we want to do is we want to create the show data button. And that's this button here, the show data button. So I named it show data. Let's scroll down below here. And let's now scroll to the show data button. And we are going to do a show data button .click. Now, for each of these tasks identified in the show data flowchart, we're going to create a procedure. We've done these before. And we're going to put these in the app inventor. This is going to be able to provide instruction that we're going to repeat several times. So separating code into the procedures is going to make the program more readable and easier for us to debug later. For example, if we see the sum is incorrect, then we know that all we have to go look for is the data sum procedure. So let's go ahead and if you, at this point, let's go ahead and switch roles. So you can switch your computers so we're getting different people to do driver and navigator. And the next person here, once you're ready, you can pause and then show me when you're ready by coming back. All right, let's go ahead and make 3 procedures. They're going to be do procedures. And we're just going to drop them over here. We'll build them as we go. So now they say procedure 2, and procedure 3. But I'm going to rename them display sum, D-I-S-P-L-A-Y, sum, capital S. Remember, sum means that things have been added together. So we're going to display what was added together. This other one here is going to be display average, A-V-E-R-A-G-E. So this one would be a procedure for displaying the average of something. So remember, average is when you add up the sum of a bunch of different things and then divide it by how many opportunities there are. And this last one I'm going to call display data list. So those three procedures we're going to eventually be using. Right now there's nothing in there, but what I do want to do is pull these out of the procedure and put them into the show data button. Now this is important for us to do because as we go through the show data button, having these in the right order is going to make a big difference in if the work actually displays itself properly or not. So when you think about mathematically how we want this to work, we want it to go in this order. You first want to collect the sum of the data. After you have the sum, then you can find the average. And then once you have the sum and average calculated out, now you can display the data list. Bing, bang, boom. That's how you should have it set up. You don't have to do the sounds, that's just me. So if we looked at this now, what's the difference between the display sum and call display sum? You can tell now that it's based on the procedure. So let's go ahead and talk about creating the display sum procedure. At this point, we've created some high-level structures in the show data button, event handler, and now it's time for us to actually go through the details of these three procedures and make sure that we fill them out properly. That's going to be the tricky part here. So what we're going to want to do first is we're going to want to describe kind of the information shown in the box. So let's start with the display sum. I'm going to drag these down a little bit so we got some space. Let's go ahead and set up the sum. Now you have to remember how sum works. First, we're going to have to create some global sum, which has been created for us. And we know that the sum is going to start with 0 because nothing's been added together yet. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to grab a set. And we're going to set the sum to where we want to start our math off with, which is 0. There's no actual number, so we're going to start with 0. Now within here, we're going to get a control here that's a for each. So we're going to grab the for each item. And the first item that we will have in here, we're going to get is we're going to grab the, come on now, let's put that in the list. We're going to want to talk about the entry amounts. So what someone put in our blank box here. That's what we're going to work with. Now, to get that, what we have to do is we have to, again, add these items together. So we're going to set the global sum, and we're going to add it together. So we're going to need a math logic and addition. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the global sum, and we're going to add it to whatever item gets put in there. So if the global sum is 0, and now we get an item, and you're probably wondering, where do I get this item from? It was up here in the item piece. The item could be 6. So to get the sum for this, you would take 6 or 0 plus the sum of 6. If we added more, now we know our global sum is 6, and then you add it as we go on. So that's how we do the adding up. So what we have to do now is we also have to set the total number label. So let's go down here where we have the total number label. And the total number label is something that's already set on our app. It is, just to show you, let me pull it up first. Total number label, we want to deal with the text. Okay. And the total number label is here. Okay, that's down here, the total patients. So on our tablet, that would be right down here. So we're going to get it to start getting ready to show things. And what we want it to show is what the global sum is. So after we've added things together and we've added other things together, what's our total sum? That's going to go there. Let's set up the next one, which is our display average. So for our display average, remember average is taking all the different things that have been created and dividing them by whatever you have. Okay. So for this one, right now, what we're going to do is we're going to set it up with setting the global average. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that average and you divide by how many items you have. So we're going to need a division. So the average will take this global sum, as we said, copy and paste, and you're going to divide it by the length of the list or the global entry amounts. So we need to take whatever the list of items are. So we're going to take length of list. Here it is. So you take the entire list, its length, and you're going to take that and you're going to combine the global entry amounts. So I'm going to take this one, copy and paste it, and put it in there. So that's how we get our average. We add them all up, and then we divide by how many there are. Okay? That makes sense so far? Okay. So what's our loop really doing here? The loop is going to check to see whether there are more items in the amounts and add those to them, change the sum, and then give us a new average. Okay? And then why do we need to create this new list? So the new list is needed to assign the data list view component elements, and this is how the data list knows what to display. Okay. So now that we have that set up, we're going to continue on. I lost my spot, so just give me a second. Okay. So now what we need to do is we need to prepare the display list. And for this, we're going to have to create another list. The display list is going to display for us all the information. So let's go ahead and grab another initial globalization. Got to start somewhere with all these things. And this one, again, we're going to create an empty list. And as we start putting in data, we're going to get that information. So the text that should be displayed for the data entry month, that's what's going to be the display here. So we're going to take the examples from kind of things that we've been talking about, and we're going to figure out where are we going to actually display this. That's what we need to create in this data display list. So let's take basically a loop. Let's take a loop for an each index 1. Let's take the number, change it to index. So for each index, we're going to go from 1 to 5. Okay. And what we want to do is we're going to go from 1 by 1, but we're going to get rid of the 5. What we want to do is we want to, again, take this entry amounts. So we're going to want to take the length of the list and the entry amounts. We're going to drop that right into here. Okay. So how many iterations or how many loops we have is going to give us the explanation of how this stuff is going to be displayed. Okay. So as we're going here, if you've been following along with Google Classroom, we're on like question 35, 36. So what's going to happen if the parameter here of the loop is set to something different? It's going to create some different answers. Okay. So that's what we're trying to create here is what it's all going to look like. So with the data display list, we now have that looking the way we want it to. And the only other thing we want to do now is we want to be able to set the do part. So let's go ahead and do that right away. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add the items to the list. So let's go into lists, and we're going to want to add the items to the list. So now what we're going to basically do is we're going to start pulling everything from our different procedures here, our sums and averages, and we're going to start displaying it. Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to get the display list to show. So we're going to add items to the display list. Did I not create that yet? Okay. I thought I did that up here. Oh, I never changed the name. Display list. Sorry. I made you do all that work and not actually change it. DISP-LAY. There we go. So now we can put display list in there. Now everything's working the way we want. So we're going to add items to this list, the global display list. And what items we're going to do is we're going to have to join, based on our things here, we're going to have to join the total patients, by the average month, okay? And that's going to display the list of things that we're looking for. So let's now set that up on our tablet, or actually on our blocks. So we got the display list marked. We're going to have to join two things together. So I'm going to grab a join, and it's going to get real tricky here as we try to join everything together. We're actually going to be joining three things. So I'm going to add another string here. And the middle string is going to be a text box. And what we want to do is we want to just put a colon between them. Okay, so we'll join whatever the month is here, and the month will join with the global entry amounts. So we're going to select an item from the list. So we need to go to lists, and we're going to select an item from the list, and we're going to have to select an item from the other list as well. Where is it? There it is. And the things that we need to do is we need to connect the global entry months. So I'm going to copy and paste that. And we're going to also get the global entry amounts. I'll copy and paste that and change it. Oops, sorry. Global entry amounts. I forgot to do global entry months. There we go. And what we're going to do is we're going to join it with the index. So what we need to do is just get the index. So we need to get the index of months. So we'll just say index. And we have to get the index of patients or amounts. Okay. Index. Now from here, this will work, but what we also have to do is we also have to make sure that we're setting the display elements. So let's also go down here to the display elements, and let's add to there the data view. I'm missing it here. There it is, data list view. Couldn't find it at first. And we want to have the elements down here. And we're going to have that actually display the global list. So now you have to put all that together just to be able to display the global list. Now, this is a lot of work to kind of put this together, but the nice thing is as we go through this, then you have it there as you start to work through other things. Okay, so we have all that set up together. Now what we need to do is we need to test the app, enter a few numbers, check to make sure it works properly, and then see if it shows up. So from here now, we basically can start picking different months and different numbers to put in and just make sure that it shows. And that's one thing that I'll have you do, and then you can work on those. And as you test your app, select the data and show more than one different thing as you're putting stuff on your list. Okay. You should start seeing items show up in your total patients and average months as you start to gather information, and it'll start to display what you need as you put it together. And I realize I haven't really been showing you what I'm doing, so let's just switch over. Okay, so I've been adding a few different items here, and yours should work perfectly fine, and it should work the way it should if we're doing it right. So I'm going to clear the data. So I'm showing you clear data work. So let's say we pick March. Earlier we did 18. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to click add. Now it says data successfully was added, but it doesn't show up until we click that show data button that we created. So these are all the ones that we've created. Here's the one that I just did. And you can see that all the other ones that I've been putting in are showing up there. So you have different ones as well as you're working. Okay, so this is how a static list works that we're creating, and this should be some of the stuff, or sorry, not static, dynamic list. This is the stuff that you should be seeing working. Okay, now from here, make sure that your app is working properly. The clear button will clear the items, so you don't have to see them, but it's always going to be in the background. So we're going to work on how to change all that up a little bit in our next video, but this at least gets you going with the first piece of getting your monthly flu patients to be tracked. And this is a perfect one considering a lot of people seem to be getting the flu nowadays, and we've looked at where you can get the data from. here's one way that some company could be able to track it, at least for now. And like I said, we'll do more in our next video. So that's all I got for now. See you later.